Hey folks, welcome back to the garage. You know, I love my old cars. I've got everything back there from steam-powered buggies to electric supercars. But one thing I don't miss about those older models, some of the, shall we say, interesting design choices. Today we're taking a look at 14 car features that have gone the way of the dinosaurs and frankly, good riddance. We're talking about those head-scratching additions that left drivers more frustrated than impressed. Remember fighting with your buddy for who got stuck in the middle seat, or trying to parallel park with those massive bench seats? And don't even get me started on those pop-up headlights, always getting stuck open or closed. So buckle up, grab a wrench, and get ready for a hilarious trip down memory lane as we explore these automotive oddities that thankfully got left in the dust. Alright, let's talk automatic seatbelts. You remember these bad boys, right? You open the door of your 80s sedan and this robotic arm shoots across your chest like something out of a sci-fi flick. The idea, I guess, was to make wearing seatbelts less of a hassle. But in reality, it just added a whole new level of complexity to getting in and out of the car. Imagine trying to reach for something in the back seat and bam, you're trapped by this metal serpent. And don't even get me started on the reliability issues. These things were notorious for jamming, leaving you stuck in your car like a contortionist trying to escape a straitjacket. It's no wonder they went extinct faster than a phone booth in a hurricane. Now, I'm all for safety. Heck, I've got more helmets in this garage than a motorcycle gang. But the execution of these automatic seatbelts? Well, let's just say they missed the mark. They were clunky, they were noisy, and they were about as user-friendly as a rabid badger. It's like they designed these things in a boardroom with zero real-world testing. You know, it's funny, for all the advancements we've made in car technology, sometimes the simplest solutions are the best. A good old-fashioned manual seatbelt, effective, reliable, and you don't need a degree in engineering to figure it out. So RIP automatic seatbelts. You tried, you really did. But sometimes progress means letting go of the things that just don't work. Alright, let's talk about a design feature that was pure automotive eye candy: pop-up headlights. These things were everywhere back in the 80s and 90s, from sporty coupes to exotic supercars. You know the drill, you hit the switch and those headlights would rise up like the eyes of a mechanical predator, ready to attack the night. Talk about cool factor. I mean, who didn't love the satisfying thwump sound they made? But as much as I loved the look, you gotta admit, these things were more trouble than they were worth. They were notorious for mechanical problems, with motors burning out, gears stripping, and those delicate little headlight doors refusing to open or close properly. Now I'm all for a little bit of flash and pizzazz in a car. After all, what's life without a little excitement? But sometimes you gotta draw the line between style and substance. And pop-up headlights? Well, they were a classic case of form over function. Sure, they looked cool, but from a practical standpoint, they were a nightmare. Think about it. They added extra weight, complexity, and cost to the car. And for what? To look cool for about 5 seconds every time you turned your headlights on? In the end, practicality won out, and pop-up headlights went the way of the cassette tape and the car phone. But hey, at least they left us with some pretty cool memories, right? You know, back in the day, everyone wanted to look like they were driving a Cadillac. I'm talking about those big, beautiful land yachts with the vinyl roofs. It was all the rage, like having white wall tires or those fuzzy dice hanging from the rearview mirror. You could get them in any color you wanted, as long as it was black, white, or maybe a dark brown. The idea was to make your car look more luxurious, like you had a chauffeur driving you around. But let me tell you, those vinyl roofs were more trouble than they were worth. They trapped heat like you wouldn't believe, turning your car into a sauna on wheels in the summertime. And don't even get me started on what happened when it rained. I remember one time I had this old Ford LTD with a vinyl roof. It was a beautiful car, but that roof was a nightmare. One hot summer day, I parked it out in the sun for a few hours. When I came back, the roof was so hot you could have fried an egg on it. I opened the door and this blast of hot, stale air hit me in the face. It was like stepping into a pizza oven. I swear I could feel the sweat starting to pour down my back, and the smell, it was like a combination of old vinyl and mildew. I ended up having to drive with the windows down for the rest of the day just to try and air the car out, but the damage was done. That vinyl roof had turned my car into a mobile sauna. From that day forward, I swore off vinyl roofs for good. They might have been fashionable for a time, but they were just too much trouble than they were worth. In the 80s, a car phone was the ultimate status symbol. Forget digital watches. A car phone meant you were a big shot. Those giant brick-like phones took up half your console. They had cords thicker than garden hoses. But who cared? It was all about the impression. Early car phones were expensive, thousands for the phone, plus installation. And then, the monthly fees, bills could be shocking. But it was the price of progress, a status symbol, even if costly. Eventually, the novelty wore off. Smaller, affordable phones took over. Car phones became obsolete. I don't miss them. Modern cell phones are better, clearer audio, easier installation. You know, they just don't make them like they used to. And when I say they, I'm talking about ashtrays. Remember those? Back in the day, every car came standard with at least one, if not two or three. It was a different time, folks. People smoked everywhere, in restaurants, on airplanes, even in hospitals, for crying out loud. And cars were no exception. You hop into any car from the 50s, 60s, even the 70s and 80s, and you'd find these little metal boxes built right into the dashboard, usually with a little cigarette lighter right next to it. Some of those ashtrays were pretty fancy too, chrome-plated with spring-loaded lids, even little lights so you could see what you were doing in the dark. It was a different era, like I said. People didn't think twice about lighting up in the car, even with kids in the back seat. Heck, I remember my dad used to smoke like a chimney in his old Buick, and he'd flick the ashes right out the window without a second thought. These days you'd be hard-pressed to find an ashtray in a new car. They've gone the way of the dinosaur, just like those pop-up headlights and bench seats. Oh sure, some manufacturers might offer a little removable ashtray as an optional extra, but for the most part they're a thing of the past. And you know what? That's probably a good thing. It's a sign that we're finally starting to take our health seriously, both our own and the health of our planet. I mean, who wants to breathe in secondhand smoke anyway? Not me, that's for sure. Besides, those old ashtrays were just little fire hazards waiting to happen. One misplaced ember, and your whole car could go up in flames. And don't even get me started on the smell. If you've ever been in a car that's been smoked in for years, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's like a combination of stale cigarettes, burnt upholstery, and regret. So, while I can appreciate a well-designed ashtray as much as the next guy, I'm not going to lose any sleep over their disappearance from modern cars. It's a sign of progress, and that's something we can all get behind. You know, back in the day, cars were like rolling sofas. Big old bench seats could fit the whole family. We're talking aunts, uncles, cousins, maybe even the family dog. It was like a clown car. But those bench seats weren't exactly known for their comfort. You'd slide around every time your dad took a corner. And forget about trying to sleep on a road trip. It was like trying to sleep on a park bench. But hey, we were just happy to have a car that could get us from point A to point B. Now I know what you're thinking, Jay, those bench seats sound like a blast from the past, but weren't they a little dangerous? And you know what? You'd be right. Those bench seats were about as safe as a unicycle on a tightrope. For starters, there were no seat belts. You might have had a lap belt if you were lucky. In a crash, you were basically a human projectile. Cars didn't have airbags or crumple zones. They were built like tanks, but your body became the crumple zone. But hey, that's progress for you, right? We learn from our mistakes and make things better. Now we've got bucket seats, seat belts, and airbags. Appreciate how far we've come. Now I love classic cars, but manual chokes always puzzled me. Starting a cold engine was a delicate dance. You'd turn the key, and nothing. Or worse, a sputtering cough. Time to engage the manual choke. It controlled the air-to-fuel mixture. Too little choke, no start, too much engine floods. It was a delicate balance. feather the choke just right, adjust as the engine warmed up. Now I'm a patient guy, I really am. But even I have my limits. Those manual chokes tested my patience more times than I can count. 1 minute the engine purring like a kitten, the next it would cough, sputter and die. And don't get me started on forgetting to disengage the choke. You'd end up with a car that ran like molasses. Those manual chokes were just one more thing that could go wrong. The cables would break, the linkages would stick, and the knobs would crack. I'm glad those manual chokes are a thing of the past. These days we've got fuel injection and cars that start with the push of a button. And you know what? I wouldn't have it any other way. Now I've driven a lot of cars in my day, from sleek sports cars to gas-guzzling muscle cars, but there's one feature that always takes me back to my younger years: crank windows. Before power windows you had to work for fresh air. Crank those windows like a strongman competition. Those crank windows didn't care about my aversion to physical exertion. They were gonna give me a workout whether I liked it or not. And if you thought rolling down a crank window was a chore, just wait till you had to roll it back up. It was like trying to reel in a runaway marlin with a fishing rod made of spaghetti. You'd grab that flimsy little crank, put your back into it, and pray that the window would cooperate. But more often than not, it would bind, it would jam, or it would simply refuse to budge, leaving you sweating, cursing, and questioning your life choices. And don't even get me started on what happened when those crank mechanisms inevitably wore out. You'd be left with a window that was either stuck halfway open or permanently sealed shut, turning your once stylish coupe into a rolling sauna in the summertime. But hey, I guess there's a reason they called them crank windows, right? Because they were enough to make you cranky. But you know what? You know, back in the day, no road trip was complete without a cassette tape loaded up and ready to go. We didn't have fancy playlists or Bluetooth streaming. You had your trusty cassette player and that was it. I remember spending hours carefully crafting the perfect mixtapes for every occasion. You had your summer cruising tunes, your romantic ballads, your get psyched up rock anthems. It was an art form, really. And let's not forget the sound of that cassette deck clicking into action. That was music in itself. Of course, you always had to worry about the tape getting chewed up or the sound quality going fuzzy, but hey, that was part of the charm, right? But times change and technology moves on, doesn't it? CDs came along and promised crystal clear sound and no more tangled tapes. They were all the rage for a while. Then, MP3 players hit the scene and suddenly, we could carry thousands of songs in our pockets. Remember the first time you saw an iPod? It was like holding the entire Library of Congress in the palm of your hand. And now we've got satellite radio, streaming services, and Bluetooth connections that let you play music right from your phone. It's amazing how far we've come. But you know what? I still have a soft spot for those old cassette players. They remind me of a simpler time. A time when you had to put a little more effort into your music listening. Now, let's talk about something that used to be a real status symbol on the road hood ornaments. You know, those fancy emblems that adorned the front of classic cars. Back in the day, a hood ornament wasn't just a decoration, it was a statement. It told the world you had arrived. Rolls-Royce had their Spirit of Ecstasy, Cadillac had their wreaths and crests, and who could forget the leaping Jaguar on a Jaguar? Pure class. They were works of art, really, intricately designed, often made of chrome or silver. You didn't see that kind of craftsmanship on just any old car. But as with all good things in the automotive world, hood ornaments eventually started to disappear. What happened? Well, a few things. For one, safety regulations became more stringent. People realized that having a pointy metal object sticking out from the hood wasn't exactly pedestrian-friendly in case of an accident. And then, there were the thieves. A fancy hood ornament was like a beacon for anyone looking to make a quick buck. They'd just pry them right off and leave you with a damaged hood. So, manufacturers started to phase them out. They moved towards more integrated designs, incorporating the emblems into the grille or the hood itself. It's a shame, really. Hood ornaments were a unique part of automotive history, but hey, you can still find them on classic cars and they still turn heads wherever they go. Okay folks, let's take a trip down memory lane and talk about a car feature that's as extinct as the dinosaurs' curb feelers. Remember those? Now for you youngsters out there, curb feelers were these springy metal rods that were mounted on the rear wheels of cars, usually on the passenger side. And their purpose? Well, they were the original parking assist system. Imagine a world without backup cameras, parking sensors, or those fancy self-parking systems. Back in the day, parallel parking was a real test of skill, especially if you were driving a big old boat of a car. That's where curb feelers came in. As you were carefully maneuvering into a tight spot, those curb feelers would gently scrape against the curb, letting you know when you were getting a little too close for comfort. They saved countless hubcaps and tires from curb rash, and they were a godsend for anyone who wasn't exactly a parallel parking pro, but as great as they were at their job, curb feelers had their downsides. For one, they weren't exactly the most stylish accessory. In fact, they were kind of an eyesore. And then there was the noise, that screeching sound of metal on concrete every time you got a little too close to the curb. Yeah, not exactly music to anyone's ears. You know, back in the day, car designers seemed to have this thing about making everything a two-step process. Take dimmer switches, for instance. You'd think a simple flick of a lever would do the trick, right? Nope, not in those days. You had to take your foot off the gas, contort your body like a pretzel, and fumble around down by the floorboard just to switch from high beams to low beams. I remember driving my old Ford Fairlane, and that thing had a dimmer switch that felt like it was installed in the next county. Every time I needed to dip the lights, it was like performing a contortionist act. And heaven forbid you had a passenger who wasn't expecting it. They'd think you were having some kind of seizure. But hey, at least it kept things interesting, right? I mean, who needs lumbar support or heated seats when you've got a built-in calf workout every time you drive at night? I can still feel that little button digging into my big toe, and let me tell you, it wasn't pretty. These days, it's all about convenience. Now, you might be wondering why anyone thought putting a dimmer switch on the floor was a good idea in the first place. Well, some folks will tell you it was a safety feature, kept your hands on the wheel, you know. But let's be real, folks. Reaching down there was more of a distraction than anything else. Plus, it wasn't exactly a precise system. You'd be driving along trying to find that sweet spot between blinding oncoming traffic and driving blind yourself. It was enough to make you want to carry a flashlight just in case. But you know what I miss most about those old floor-mounted dimmer switches? The sound, that satisfying clunk when you finally found the right position. It was like a little victory every time. Of course, I'm not saying I want to go back to those days. I'm perfectly happy with my modern cars and their convenient, well-placed controls. But hey, a little nostalgia never hurt anyone, right? You know, folks, back in the 50s and 60s, cars were all about style, and nothing said style like a good set of tail fins. It was the space race era, and everyone was obsessed with rockets, jets, and all things futuristic. Car designers, well, they took that inspiration and ran with it, putting tail fins on everything from Cadillacs to Chevrolets. I remember seeing those cars as a kid and thinking they were straight out of a comic book. Some of those fins were massive, sticking out like wings, and I swear some of them could have doubled as picnic tables. People used to decorate them with chrome, lights, you name it. But you know, as cool as they looked, tail fins were about as useful as a screen door on a submarine. They didn't make the cars go faster, handle better, or improve fuel efficiency. In fact, they probably made the cars less aerodynamic. But hey, who cared about gas mileage back then? So why did tail fins go extinct? Well, a few reasons. For one, safety became a bigger concern. Those pointy fins were like spears in an accident, and they didn't do any favors for pedestrian safety either. Plus, as the 60s wore on, tastes changed. People started to appreciate smaller, more European-inspired designs. The muscle car era was in full swing, and those cars were all about performance, not just looks. Tail fins, with their extra weight and drag, just didn't fit the bill anymore. It's funny how things come and go in the car world. One minute everyone's clamoring for the latest trend, and the next minute, it's ancient history. Tail fins might seem like a quirky footnote in automotive history now, but they represent a time when car design was all about pushing the boundaries of style and imagination. And part of me misses that. I mean, who wouldn't want to cruise around in a car that looks like it could take off at any second? Maybe tail fins will make a comeback someday. Folks, car designers, they're always trying something new. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And then there are bubble windows, huge curved glass for a panoramic view, like piloting a spaceship. But they distorted the view, heated up the car, and were prone to cracking. Despite their drawbacks, a few car makers in the 50s and 60s experimented with bubble windows. You had the Kaiser Frazer Vagabond, the Chevrolet Corvette, even the Ford Thunderbird dabbled in the trend. But it didn't last long. Drivers quickly realized that those panoramic views came at a price, and that price was practicality. By the late 60s, bubble windows had all but disappeared, relegated to the dustbin of automotive history. It's too bad, really. I admire the ambition, the desire to create something truly unique and innovative. But sometimes the best ideas are the ones that are the simplest and most effective. And when it comes to car windows, you really can't beat a good old-fashioned flat piece of glass. It might not be as flashy as a bubble window, but it gets the job done without any unnecessary drama. And in the end, isn't that what really matters? Well folks, there you have it, a trip down memory lane to revisit some of the car features that have gone the way of the dinosaur. Some of them were cool, some of them were quirky, and some of them were just plain head-scratchers. But they all played a part in shaping the cars we drive today. Thanks for joining us on this nostalgic journey through automotive history. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more fascinating car content. See you next time.